gathering up canned fruit and air fresheners for the boys' home. We got their annual Christmas letter also, that you ladies that are remembering these boys and the birthdays and the special events, they are grateful for what you've done in their lives, and that's a mighty good work. We're looking at the 29th Psalm, and the time to read this psalm is during a storm. I tell you, I was impressed one time years ago coming down from Amarillo going to Lubbock. I was going back. We were living in Lubbock at the time. This is years ago when I was in school. And I went through one of those West Texas lightning storms that there's only one other place that I've seen lightning like that, and that was in right south of Shiprock, New Mexico. Doyle, what's the number of that highway? Didn't it used to be 666? They changed it, didn't they? Something like that. But I have never seen lightning like that. As a matter of fact, there were several times that I thought it was going to strike the car. It would strike out to the right or left of us, and blue balls of fire, puff balls would just flail across the road, and it'd just shake your teeth. And we came on through that lightning storm, and I'll tell you what, the kids had been asleep coming down from Idaho. Judeanne has been asleep, but about 2 minutes of that, and they weren't asleep. Everyone was looking big-eyed, and it would just get brighter than bright in that blue of those lightning flashes that hit the ground. And whew, I said, I've never seen anything like, and I haven't since. I haven't seen anything like that since. And that was a terrible display of lightning, but at the same time, there's a power and there's a beauty in that. That's what this psalm reminds us. Now, this comes from the pen of David, out in the open, if you will, with sheep, herding them, and that day and age they would leave the sheepfold. They'd go out in the pastures, and those thunderstorms would come across the area just like it does across ours. And David is writing with the intensity of firsthand witness to seeing those, and he gives us 7 voices in this, okay? 7 voices that David recognizes or sees in the power of this storm. And so he gives us the publishers of this Bible that I have long read from, the heading they have is The Voice of Jehovah in the Storm. And we've titled our theme of the 29th Psalm, God's Glory Seen and Heard in the Storm. The voices is what we are alluding to. So there is a power. There is an awesome power in this universe. There is the power and the might of the electrical grid, the windmills that are all over the country. Now, McKenna and I were coming back through the cutoff from Clone across to Roaring Springs, and getting her back from the orthodontist and racing back to get here in time for services tonight. And we were talking about all of that power that those things generate. We've had hydropower, we have electrical power, we have the awesome energy of the atomic energy. I used to work in the atomic energy field, the INEL in Idaho, and the tremendous power that is found in the enrichment of uranium-239. No, the enrichment of uranium-235 that makes it 239, and the fact that they cannot figure the life of it. So they figure it in half-lives. And the half-life on one nuclear fuel rod in a submarine is 37,000 years. 37,000 years. Now that's a long time in my mind. Long, long time. And imagine that, a half-life. And so everything in the atomic energy field, as far as figuring time on how long this will last, it's figured in half-life, because the figures would get too big if the numbers would just get so big that you couldn't get your head around them. And that's power. Power. Zero power plutonium reactor. You can walk through that reactor with a pair of it's not cardboard, it's a little thicker than newspaper, but you put those on, you put your gloves on, and then you put the shoe covers on, and you walk through that reactor, and the width of a piece of paper will shield you from the rays of that radiation. It won't hurt you at all. I worked in that for years, and you can walk backwards and forwards through that, and it won't hurt you at all. But once that thing becomes the two halves of that reactor are moved together, and it starts reacting with those rods, then it produces what is called weapons-grade plutonium. And that is the most powerful force known to man. That's the bombs and the things that just absolutely create such terror that there's just no way to imagine what a nuclear blast would be within 15 or 20 miles of this place. And this psalm shows us the awesome power that's stored in this universe. Just stored. It's there. It's always there. I mean, it is such a power that we have not even touched the hem of the garment. Now, as far as the earth's concerned, we are not evolving in power, we are using it up. And that has to do with the second law of thermodynamics. You cut a tree down and you burn the part of the tree in the fireplace, what do you have when it quits burning? Ash. So everything, second law of thermodynamics is that something goes from the stage of sin to a lesser stage. You put a gallon of gas in your car and you burn it, and where does it go? Say it goes to something else, all right, to a lesser thing. It goes, in, of course, into gas and emissions of that and things of that nature. So what you have here is a discussion of God's power in his universe, all right? And nothing escapes outside it. It's like a terranium. It doesn't go away. It just goes to a different form. When you burn the wood, it goes to ashes. And then the ashes are dissolved by water or whatever, but it doesn't leave the universe. It doesn't leave it. It doesn't go away. The average glass of water that you and I drank today has been used somewhere around 8 times. About 8 times. And in some of the larger population areas, that's pretty easy to see in their water. They have to filter it with different things and all of that. But the average glass of water has been used 8 times when you get it, because it is a terranium. We are in a fixed, sealed system. All right, there's no more rain on the earth. I mean, there's no more water upon the earth than what the earth has. It doesn't generate water. It doesn't make water. It doesn't generate power. All of this God put into motion, and that's what this psalm's about. That's what this psalm's about. There's no new power. There's no new water. There's no new fuels. It's all here, and it's all been placed here. And he gives God praise for the wonder of this. Now, here's the way the psalm reads. We'll read it and come back, and I want you to look at it. I broke the psalm down. I started off with the 14-size print, and then I said that'll never work. And so I have gone to the 11 size to get all of that in on the bottom part of your outline, because well, it saves paper and it keeps it all on the same sheet. So, ascribe unto Jehovah, O you sons of God, or sons of the mighty, ascribe unto Jehovah glory and strength. And so he's saying, recognize this and give it to God. Give it to God, the praise and the glory. Ascribe it to God. Give it to the right place. You know, let it work. Let the work be recognized for who's doing it. You see, who's involved in it. And so, ascribe unto Jehovah glory and strength. And so, this 29th Psalm deals with putting the glory where it belongs. You know, if you do something and you do a good job at it, and someone comes up and starts praising your coworker, and they are silent instead of saying you're mistaken. It's my coworker Simron here, not me. And the guy just takes all the praise, and then the fellow walks off. And how would Simron feel if I didn't correct that? Well, give God the glory. That's what this is about. And so David is saying, I want you to make sure that you tell people that it is God at work in this universe. I want you to tell people, as I will, that we give God the glory for his power, the glory due his name, he said in verse 2, and worship Jehovah in the beauty of holiness. In the beauty of holiness, or one translation says, in holy array. We set up in holiness. When we worship God, we come before God in holiness. All right? That keeps the world out of the worship, you see. We do it in holiness. You remember reading in Zechariah, Zechariah said, even the bells on the harness are holy unto the Lord. So here's a harness hanging on the rack that they used to put on the oxen to pull the Ark of the Covenant. You think they took that harness down and hooked it on an ox and plowed the garden with it? No, they didn't do that. They didn't use what had been ascribed to the Lord. They didn't use that every day in home life or in their recreation. Here's another. Someone called me the other day. Well, it was Brother Guy Camel, and asked me about songs, the songs we sing in worship and etc., and using them at home, and having a get together and enjoying playing, and just a family get together. And I said, God, be careful with that. He said, why? And I said, you ever read the book of Daniel? And he said, well, yeah, you taught us through it. And I said, yeah, did you ever read about many tekel upharsin? And he said, oh, is that where the hand came out and wrote on the wall? I said, yeah, you know what they were doing? They were using the vessels that had been dedicated to the Lord. They've been using them in their party. Yeah, that's what the Bible says. They've been using them that had been dedicated in the temple of Jehovah, and they'd been using them for an everyday party. And God said, that is going to get you in big trouble. And he died that night. I don't want to die that night because I'm abusing something that's set apart for worship. I don't want to do it. I don't want to make something that is holy mundane. That means ordinary. I don't do it. I don't do that. Someone asked me, why don't you buy this camouflage stuff and put on your rifle or shotguns, Crowley? Here's this, someone wanted to send me a snakeskin to put on my bow, to back my bow with. Boy, that sure would be pretty. That'd make your bow look real good. I said, no, I don't want that. You know why I didn't want it? What would having that bow around all the time make me do with a rattlesnake skin on it? I would get so used to it that the color pattern wouldn't alarm me. it would become ho-hum every day. And it wouldn't alarm me. It'd be used to it. My mind would catalog it as safe, safe, safe. And when I see that color pattern, I want everything in my body to say, yeah, I mean, I don't want it to say safe, safe, safe. And so I don't put it on. Okay? I don't put it on. I learned years ago, truck driving, I don't sleep on the porch with the sun in my face. Because then when I get in the truck, what happens, Doyle? Yeah, you train your brain to lay on a lounge chair or something set in the sun on the porch and go to sleep. And then you drive a truck and that sun gets on your face, and what's your brain say? Yeah, you're on the porch, but what? Kick back and go sleep. You can train your brain, see? Well, here you are. You train your brain to holiness. Okay? What is holy? I don't give the kids snack crackers when they were growing up. I didn't give them the unleavened bread wafers, And the kids at my house, and even when they come over, and even the grandkids, they call it church house grape juice. Welch's grape juice. They call it church house grape juice. You see, because we realize that we don't use that every day. We don't use that every day. So, worship in holiness. Holy means set apart. It means different. It means not mundane. It means not usual. All right? So we get that in our mind. So we're looking on our outline. The power and majesty of God's Word are seen in this psalm. Now he's going to pick it up in verse 3. And what you're going to do with the number 7, we studied several years ago in the Revelation, and we did the number chart, the number 7, the number 12, and etc. All right? And the number 12 is God's involvement with mankind. The number, the 12 apostles we had. And by the way, the Lord didn't choose 6 of them women and 6 of them men. He didn't do that. He didn't. Okay, and so then you have the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 apostles. The number 12 came to show God at work in humanity. Well, the number 7 has always been used in Scripture as divine completeness. Whatever it's about, divine complete, like the 7 spirits of God. That is the symbol of the divine completeness of the Holy Spirit of God. You read of that in the Revelation. Now, you're going to have 7 voices in this storm. 7 voices. What will that say to you by the number 7? That's it. This is God's complete power, God's complete control. You can say it a half a dozen different ways, and it's still divine perfection or divine completeness. Okay? That's what you're going to be looking at. On the outline, there are 3 sub-things that you're going to find in the psalm. You're going to find praise, you're going to find comfort, and you're going to find something to cheer you. Something to cheer you. And the Revelation chapter 10, we'll look at that in a moment. Psalms 103 and Nahum 1 and verse 3. All of these are, you see, the wrap of nature around the great power of the universe, around God. So let's pick up with the voices. In verse 3, they're number 1. The voice of Jehovah is upon the waters. The God of glory thunderous, even Jehovah upon many waters, or the great waters. All right. So here you have the voice of the powerful rainstorm. You have the voice of the surge of the sea when it's in storm. You have the voice of the rushing of the brook, of the rivers. And so the first voice here is on the water. Verse 4, you find the second and third voices. The voice of Jehovah is powerful. The voice of Jehovah is full of majesty. And so here's that power in the storm. Here's that awesome power that you have. The voice of Jehovah is full of majesty. This has to do with the noise, if you will, of the storm, the tremendous noise that a storm brings with it, the thunder and the power of the winds, and that voice is so full of power. In verse 5, the voice of Jehovah breaks the cedars. Now, north of Jerusalem, at the tail end of the Zagros mountain range, is the cedars of Lebanon, and these were great, huge trees in David's day. This was before the era of the chainsaw, the sawmill, the crosscut saw, and all that we built. Everything built out of lumber. These were forested ranges, and these trees, of course, would be tore down by the power of the storm. And you can see it. There was a tornado came through Little Rock several years ago. Judy Ann's niece's father-in-law had a little drugstore in this little old burg, Fuller, Arkansas, and it killed him. That tornado killed him. And when we drove through there on 167, when you come over a little rise there, everything's just laid down. I'm talking about big timber. I'm talking about trees like this. And all on each side of the highway, it's a double highway like 82 is, and on each side of the highway as far as you can see down it before the thing turns, the great, huge trees are just laid down like you had dumped a box of toothpicks upside down. They've been there for 100 years or better, and they just all laid down, just like they'd all been cut at the stump and laid. They were all down, all facing the same way. They was all laid down. Just a power. And these cedars, he says, of Lebanon. Yeah, Jehovah breaketh in pieces the cedars of Lebanon. To David, that's the strongest tree in their whole area or arena of life was them great big cedars. And when those things start snapping and popping and crashing and splitting and all of that, it gets your attention, doesn't it? It gets your attention. Tree limbs blowing down, that gets our attention today, doesn't it? And so here's the power. This is just a song of nature is what it is, but it's recognizing the power in the universe is God, and that no storm ever originates without God's knowledge of it. Why? Because he is in control of this universe. Notice what he does. He makes them to skip like a calf, and Lebanon and Sirion like a young wild ox. And so Sirion is a place. It's it's up on Mount Hermon, and that's one side of the forest world up there. And so here you have that southern tip of Lebanon and Mount Hermon, and you have limbs and logs and shattered pieces of cedar just flying through the air. Just flying through the air. What's the point of this? Power. Who's in control? Power. Power's in control. Who has the power? God does. God does. We can build great big ships. That gigantic container ship coming across the ocean back last summer, and from some kind of faulty radio contact or message or something. They weren't made aware of the violence of the storm, and you know that great, tremendous work of mankind went to the bottom of the sea, just like the Titanic went down, because it interfered with the laws of nature. Whatever we build, God has something stronger than what we build. And so here's this power. All right, and the voice of Jehovah cleaveth or heweth on the flames of fire. You know what that is. That's lightning. That's lightning. And so in this storm, you watch this stuff as it just forks out all over the sky. All over the sky. And it's a dazzling display. It's dangerous, but it's a dazzling display. And you don't have to be right under the direct blast. One of the professional golfers in Oklahoma was 15 miles away from the center of the thunderstorm, and he was struck by lightning. It took him a long time to get over that during the professional golf tournament. So now when there's one within 25 miles, they cancel everything because the finger of that lightning goes across the sky. So here you have that picture of the lightning, and the voice of Jehovah shaketh the lightning. What do you get when you get that sizzle? That lightning comes down. What do you tense up for? What's fixing to happen? Yeah, but there's something comes with that. You hear that, you do, and then boom, right? You hear that boom. You know, our house was hit last year. And if that lightning that came through the wall had been 8 inches, and I didn't measure this, the telephone guy measured it. If it had been 8 inches further to the south, it'd hit that oxygen tank, Judy Ann's, and her and I wouldn't be here talking about it. You know, we'd have punched out together because it was about 6:30 morning. We were still in the bed when that hit. Somebody going down the highway said they saw that hit our house. But I'm telling you what, it sounded like a 1,000-pound bomb went off right there next to the bed. I mean, the shatter, the boom was so loud, and the shattering noise that it's just hard to express it in terms that we can understand. And so here you have that jagging flame of lightning headed to the earth, and when it makes contact, you get that tremendous pow when it hits. And the voice of Jehovah shaketh the wilderness. Jehovah shaketh the wilderness of Kadesh. That's the southern edge. Kadesh is where the Israelites came, crossed the Red Sea, turned north, went up to take the promised land. They didn't have to wander 40 years in the wilderness. They didn't have to do that. They got up to the border at Kadesh Barnea, and they sent the spies in. The spies come back. 10 of them said, we can't, we really can't. 2 of them said, yes, we can, we really can. And the people voted. You know what the people do when they vote? Yeah, that's why the Electoral College is a good thing, because the majority is a mob. And the mob voted, and they were going to kill Moses and Aaron and the spies, the 2 that said, we can do it. We can do it. God intervened, turned them around, sent them into the wilderness for 38 more years. 2 years and 38 makes what? 40. So they wandered in the wilderness 40 years. The first 2 years, they crossed the Red Sea, and they spent 2 years getting ready to take the promised land. And they didn't do it. They didn't do it because they trusted in themselves and not in the power of God. So he turned them around in their unbelief, and they stayed 38 years in that Sinai desert wandering, terrible country that was there so that God could bring the second generation up to take the land. Kadesh Barnea was the turnaround place. Kadesh was the southern border of the land of Israel. All right, it still is today. All right, well, they've made some excursions, taking some land away from from Egypt in the 1967 war, and so they're a little further south than the Wadi Del Arish, where Kadesh Barnea. The Wadi Del Arish is where it's the wintertime rain stuff runoff. That's why it's called a wadi. It's not live water year round. Okay, so you have Lebanon, which is the north border, where the trees are. You have Kadesh, which is the southern border of the land. So what's the picture? He does. Across the whole land. There you go. Thank you, Sim. Across the whole land. And so the full length of the promised land, if you will. The full length of it. All of it. All right? And the voice of Jehovah makes the deer to calf, and stripped the forest bare, and in his temple everything saith glory. Everything says glory. See, all of the angelic host, everything says glory. The animal world, all of it. That's why he starts off in verse 1 and 2 and says, we that are people ascribe to Jehovah. Nature does. Nature does. The ox does. The goat, the deer. You know, everything ascribes this power unto God. So we should too. The flood, no accident. Look what he said in verse 10. Jehovah sat as king at the flood. And what's a king do besides sit? He does kingly things, doesn't he? When a king gives commands, he gives directives. You know, he gives orders. He oversees things by his power and might. That's what kings do. That's what they do for a living, you know. All right, so the Lord Jehovah is king at the flood. So the flood wasn't happenstance. I mean, he directed the flood. He oversaw the flood. And so the flood, the Bible, yes, Jehovah sitteth as a king forever. Jehovah will give strength unto his people. Jehovah will bless his people with peace. He says in a great banner across the sky, our God is active in his world. He is. He didn't wind it up like an alarm clock and set it on a shelf and let the time run out. He's active in our world. He's active in our lives. If he is active in the weather, he is also active in your life. You see this? He has the power of the universe. The greatest forces that affect you and I have to do, and I'm talking about in times of peace, it has to do with what? Weather phenomena. Isn't that right? Some of you come in and said, ooh, it's cold out there. You know? And the cold will start to affect us. It will. It means we have to put, lights in well houses. We have to put heaters in well houses. We have to turn on, clean the filters and turn on the furnace in the house or light the stove. Weather is the greatest thing that most of us deal with. I'm talking about outside forces. It's the weather. It's the wind, the rain, the ice, the snow, the heat, or tornadoes, thunderstorm. That's the greatest phenomena we deal with. Okay? There's generally, you don't step off your front porch in the morning, and there be something, there big booger bear to eat you up. There's not, you don't have that fear. You don't live in Alaska or in Canada or even in northern Idaho where you have to worry about a grizzly bear eating you up when you get out of your house in the morning. So the greatest thing that you contend with is, I'm talking about not your own. Now, if your car don't start, that's That's not what I'm talking about. That means a dirty battery post or you ran out of gas or something like that. But the greatest phenomenon we deal with is weather related. Is it not? Yeah. In the morning, it's supposed to be 25 degrees Fahrenheit. That's be something to deal with. It will. Okay, so it is not happenstance. Do you see this? This psalm tells us the power behind nature. Nahum 1, let's look at this. The kids are not in yet. Let's look at this. Nahum, it's one of the captivity prophets. It's on page 922 in my Bible. Okay? And here's what he says right after Micah. Okay? Little 2-page letter prophet. In chapter 1 in verse 3, it says, Jehovah is slow to anger and great in power, and will by no means clear the guilty. Jehovah hath his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebukes the sea and makes it dry, and drieth up all the rivers. You see that? The mountains quake at him, and the hills melt. The earth is upheaved at his presence, yea, the world and all that dwell therein. Who can stand before his indignation? Yeah. And so what you have here is a recognition that Jehovah has his way in the whirlwind and in the storm. Okay? And so there's a power. There's a power at work. There's a majesty here. And you can look on your outline and see the figures that he uses that are attributed to his voice. He sits on the flood. He's the king over the flood. And so there's a tremendous lesson here in just paying attention to what nature is telling you. What nature is telling you. You know, the psalmist wrote in the 14th Psalm, the fool has said in his heart, there's no God. And the point is, when you consider all of these things that God does, how in the world can you say that there is no God? There's no power. There's no power like this.